All right, gang. So let's get this party started here officially. It's 2:06 p.m. Central Time. We are on week lab number 2 out of 4, and we are concluding the halfway point into our 8-week term. So I think you guys heard it in the very beginning and are probably feeling it now. Really, this course is flying by. We started off call it 4 weeks ago, and you guys were newbies. You guys got the entire 8-week term started pretty quickly, and now you guys are at this point where hopefully you are coasting along. So super excited for today's lab, just because we got a lot more breakouts planned. I think I planned it out and mapped it out where we're not going to run out of time by the end of the 2 weeks. Hopefully still take a little bit of a break at the halfway point. Couple quick reminders here. Number one, make sure your name is showing in Zoom. If you have like anything beyond your name or maybe like iPhone as your name, or maybe a nickname or another family member's name, change it for us to your name. That way we have more visibility of who hopped onto the Zoom. If you have questions on how to do that, I'm sure you could just ask on the chat board and she could type it through. Secondly, for today's lab, as much as possible, please turn on your cameras. I know that's kind of just like a minimal standard we expect during the webinars and labs, but particularly today when the breakouts, please turn on your lab. I know some of you have shared that you guys are kind of in transition and or some doing things offline and or maybe are feeling under the weather where you cannot turn on your camera, which is fine. But if you are able to, please do. This is what we're going to be going through today, gang. So it seems like a lot. It's really, I probably see 4 main things. We're going to go through a little review, get our minds warmed up, and then we will layer in a lot of the assessment processes. As you can see here, we're going to have a discussion on the cardiovascular assessments. After we go through the standard operating procedures for them, we will go into the single leg squat where Sheena and I were going to demonstrate how to provide that tell, show, do experience. You guys are going to go into breakouts, provide that tell, show, do experience amongst each other, and then we'll come back into the large group and provide maybe 1 or 2 examples. Same thing for the push-pull assessment. And in the push-pull assessment, what will happen is Sheena and I are going to provide a little bit of a tell, show, do experience there. We're going to assess Sheena's posture when it comes to the push and pull assessment. You guys are going to take notes, and then you're going to discuss amongst the group what are the potential underactive or overactive muscles based on Sheena's pushing and pulling movements. And then finally, the core breakout at the end. Hopefully you guys have thought about maybe a favorite core exercise or one that you like to do on your own, where you guys are going to share your favorite core exercises within a breakout, provide tell, show, do experiences, and then perhaps a large group breakout within that as well. So I think that should fill up our 2 hours probably pretty quickly. Of course, if there's any questions, feel free to come off mute and or type it in the chat board where Shane and I can address. Shane, anything you want to add here as we get into some quick review?
I don't think so.
Cool. All right, guys, a couple of housekeeping items here. Number 1, all of you should have probably seen the LT, the Lifetime Academy midterm survey, multiple places at this point. The first place would have been during the recap email on Wednesday. I sent out the Wednesday recap to everyone. The end of week recap that was sent out yesterday. And then I'm pretty sure Katie Resty from Student Services has sent this out already. We will again send out the link to the LTA midterm survey tomorrow or by tomorrow when we send out the lab recording. But just so we can get a quick pulse check, type in the chat board you have or you have not completed the LTA midterm survey. That way we have a little bit of visibility there. And then of course, if you have not, please make sure to fill that out during your earliest convenience and hopefully before Monday. Second thing, Rob M graciously put on his teaching hat on, as he is a former educator. I guess we're not former educators or lifelong educators, but Rob, if you're available, can you come off mute and kind of tell the group what you've created? And then what I'm going to ask is from the entire group, if you feel like this would benefit you, reach out to Rob, and he'd love to forward and share with all of you really the template he's created to help all of you with acute variable memorization. So Rob, are you on? Oh, I know Rob is not on because he told me I think he's getting his COVID vaccine. So with that being said, so this is what Rob has created, gang. So he understands, like all of you, that memorizing the acute variables per last week's Tuesday's webinar when we've asked you to memorize the acute variables by your NASM exam. if you listen to my focus hour, I stressed the same thing. And we went through in the small group focus hour a ton of great maybe example questions on acute variables. So what Rob did was he made different charts. This is something I think he put in an email that you could laminate and really just kind of practice onto your own of all of the acute variables per each strength training type, per each phase of the OPT model. So something ongoing that some of you might gravitate towards when it comes to memorizing those acute variables. If you want that, if you want something like this, what I'll probably do, I'll just include it in the recap email tomorrow. That way, as an attachment, that way, if you like it, you want to utilize it, feel free. Looks like on the chat board, there's a lot of feedback there. So yeah, I'll just share it with everyone. Rob said it was 100% okay, so I think it would benefit many or all of you. All right, gang. So let's get our minds warmed up. Couple things here as we layer in more assessments in today's lab. We got subjective, objective assessments. All of you guys should know this by now. Per NASM, there's two types of assessment processes: subjective and objective. You have all of the subjective assessments found on the left-hand side, all of the objective ones on the right-hand side. We should not diagnose or treat any type of medical condition. But with that being said, we've gone through things like the Part Q, health history, SMART goal setting. 2 focus hours ago, we really broke down a good SMART goal. The first lab, all of you took a regular goal and we broke it down into SMART goals. Objective assessments, you guys are either watching the Sally videos or have hopefully practiced some of the objective assessments onto your clients, your friends and family. Things like the overhead squat assessment, things like a static postural assessment, maybe skin fold caliper assessment, circumference girth measurements. All of these objective assessments will absolutely be beneficial in really honing in onto your skill sets based on everything you've learned thus far. Sheena, can you make sure that I think that's Kate changes her name to her actual name? All right, next thing here, guys. So let me ask you guys, and either come off mute or type it in the chat board. But with the subjective and objective assessments in its entirety, when it comes to the assessment process, why is that it's so important that we start with an assessment process? I'd love to hear somebody come off mute if we're confident here.
Go ahead.
I'll
come. I think because it will help so the client doesn't get further injured.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if they're if their feet are coming up in the squat, you know, their heels are lifting, and you just keep adding more damage to that by throwing weight on them, you know, giving them a back squat to do, and you know, they have a poor squat to begin with. It just adds more damage to the process, I guess.
Yeah, Maria, I like that. I'd love to elaborate on that as well, because I think when you talk about injury prevention, it come in 2 different ways in the assessment process. Number one, in the Part Q or health history, like just asking if there's any previous injuries or reasons why they can't do certain types of movement. That's important. And then secondly, to your point as well, during any type of movement or dynamic assessment, to identify potential underactive and overactive muscles. What we don't want to do is exacerbate the cumulative injury cycle where somebody maybe re-injures themselves due to improper movement patterns. Were you going to say something else to that?
Oh, no, Zillig, I wanted to add to that in that when people go and they choose to get a personal trainer, it's a big commitment financially and everything. So they want to know the why of everything. So you don't necessarily, if you're telling them we're going to do this and this, they want to know the why of everything. They want to know, you know, why do I have to, why do you think I need to stretch this? Why do I, and because if you don't have the case behind it, they are not going to be as diligent in doing what you say you do. In other words, you have to have the why. And also the assessment really gives them a beginning point. And honestly, from my experience, people want to see progress in 4 weeks. It may not be the progress they want, but they want to see some progress, whether anything. So if you don't have a starting point, you have nothing to measure. And we need to measure for these people that are paying a lot of money. I mean, they are trusting you to give them results. And that's really so important to them.
Love that, Gina. I really appreciate that, Maria, as well. Appreciate the contribution there. And 100% agree. I think the thing that stood out mostly with Gina's point there is the progress tracking. At the end of the day, we got to be able to show clients results. We're in a results-driven business here. And without having some sort of starting point, to Gina's point, we can't assess any type of progress. We can't high five in a month from now, 3 months from now, 6 months from now, and let them know that they've been successful in achieving their fitness goals. So keep that in mind. Ultimately, all of this, when we provide the results that the clients are looking for, it's going to help with your programming. Whether you are creating workouts or programs for your clients, we got to make sure we have the right product. That right product is going to lead to a client retention. That client retention is going to lead to really the longevity and having the career in the fitness industry.
And also, Zay, like sometimes clients don't always tell you the truth. So, you know, you can just talk with somebody and they're like, no, I don't have any injuries. I'm good. I'm healthy. And then, you know, you do the squat overhead assessment and you start seeing something that looks like, you know, it's off track or not correctly aligned. And you say to them, oh, you know, after, you know, did you ever have something happen with your shoulder? And they're like, oh yeah, you know, I had shoulder surgery last year. And you find out a whole nother, you know, issue that they had. Maybe they didn't tell you in the beginning. So I think an assessment is good to, for your own knowledge also, just to see.
100%. I love that, Maria. And that definitely does happen in the fitness industry. It's happened to me countless times where a potential client or client forgets something that may have happened 10, 20, 30 years ago. And then through improper movement patterns and or muscle imbalances, we identify that something perhaps did happen in the past. So great call out there. All right, so let's move forward. I think we are properly warmed up here and you guys are thinking properly. So as we go through today's content in today's lab, a couple of things that I want to share here. We've talked about soft skills really countlessly, or countless times. I don't know, countlessly is a word, maybe endlessly, multiple times over the last 4 weeks. And previously we've shared different soft skills, but these are the soft skills I really want to make sure we hone in on, at least for today. I think last lab or even this the last couple of webinars, perhaps, I don't think Sheena and I properly discussed the tell, show, do process. And it's something we're going to be highlighting today, where essentially we want to tell the client what to do. We want to show them how to do it. And then we want to have them actually do it, and where we can make adjustments with our cueing. I did talk about this, I believe, during my last focus hour. So if you haven't tuned into that, please make sure you're tuned into that, not only for the acute variables, but for that proper explanation. But kind of soak that in for today, just because that's how the entire client experience or in-session experience should be moving forward, whether you're practicing now or even post-Lifetime Academy when you are training actual clients. Other soft skills here, starting with the why, Gina pointed that out earlier. We got to be able to provide justification to everything we're doing. That really starts with the assessment process. Properly communicating the full protocol expectations. Never putting a client in an uncomfortable or uncertain situation is going to be key as part of that experience. Staying positive. So examples of staying positive is maybe just not putting any type of negative connotation, like you're doing that wrong versus let me show you a better way, perhaps we could do that. So just trying to make everything a little bit more positive, provide safety. That's probably really paramount to the client experience. We never want to put our clients through unsafe situations. And then once you provided the tell, show, do experience or any type of communication, just ask if they have any questions by checking for understanding. So Sheena, I always ask you this question: which one do you feel like is the most important soft skill that everyone should be focused on, at least for today?
Start with why.
Start with why. All right. As easy as that. No elaboration.
Well, yes, if you want. I know that we're on a tight timeline, so I'm trying to like keep my answer short today because I know we have a jam-packed agenda. But yes, the note that I have is, and this isn't necessarily related to this, it's more related to goals, but I think it is important because when you say start with why, people think why and asking why, and you don't actually ask why. You ask more what questions, how questions, versus why questions. But for sure, explaining how what you're about to do is going to help them with specifically what they're trying to achieve. So I'm not going to talk about, again, Zelig, if your goal is to run a marathon, I'm not going to talk about how this relates to fat loss because that's not relevant to you. And I think that's really important, is keeping everything relevant to that client and how injury prevention is going to help you train for your marathon. How every single thing that we do, and if it's not relevant and there's not a reason for it, then it's not going to be in your program.
Appreciate that, Shane. I'm going to go with tell, show, do. I'd love for everyone to focus on that today because I definitely think all of us could get better within that. I just typed in the question on the chat board based on all of these soft skills. What is going to be your focus on today? So type it in the chat board. Let me know where you want to focus your soft skills for today. That way we can become better at whatever that is coming out of the next 2 hours here. So let us get into our first, call it topic for today, which is going to be cardiovascular assessments. Per NASM, there's 2 main cardiovascular assessments that they talk about. What are they? Type it in the chat board. 2 cardiovascular assessments. You guys should understand the protocols within this, the YMCA steps and the Rockport walk assessment. Somebody come off mute and talk to the group. Why is it important that we provide cardiovascular assessments to clients? You're going to have clients that tell you they hate doing cardio. They don't want to do cardio. They just want to focus on strength training. They just want abs, whatever it might be. Why is it important that we take our clients through cardiovascular assessments? You guys started off real hot.
And I'm gonna say Gina and Maria have been rock stars with stepping up and speaking today. So I think I might have heard Kaylin coming off mute.
Yeah, that was me.
Awesome. Let's hear it.
So I was just gonna say, because it gives you like a good baseline assessment of where they are at, like, you know, with obviously their cardio and their heart, everything that, you know, we really need to focus on and zone in on, because health and fitness doesn't, obviously, like, everyone wants to look good, but it's more than that, you know, like, we need to know like where you're at so that way you can achieve better goals.
Awesome. Appreciate that, Kaylin. 100% agree there. It's going to help really most everyone achieve their fitness goals. Anyone want to add to that?
I got something.
Go ahead.
And with the cardiovascular assessment, you got to have good cardio to even lift weights, to be and have intensity with weights. You got to have a little bit of cardio for that, or you'll burn out quick on that too. So cardio is just good for all around.
Okay, I'll buy into that, especially, guys, whether you realize it or not, even in the max strength and power phases, cardio is going to help build on really your power output at the end of the day with your formulation of ATP. So even if you have goals that are not associated with like long bouts of cardio, cardio is still going to help with all types of goals in the OPT model. So I think cumulatively we got it. Is anyone else dying to say something else about cardiovascular assessments and the reason why behind it?
Well, I will say one thing, especially with my people that, like, let's say they don't like cardio. I do want to set my clients up for success. So I don't want to go into training them and pushing them to doing something that they physically, due to their assessment. If I was doing an assessment, I would know this is not going to be something they can do. So the assessment will give you information knowing that don't make your client do something that's going to be, I guess, defeating. It's make sure that it's something it's doable, but also there's a reason for it. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yep,
Okay.
Love it. Appreciate Gina, Kaylin, and Troy. I'm buying into all of your responses per NASM as well. You know, if we were to wrap it all up, we got to be able to identify safe and effective programming starting points when it comes to regular cardiovascular exercise intensities. So with that being said, without a cardiovascular assessment, we cannot do that. With the 2 that you guys speak about, the Rockport and YMCA step test, what I want to do over the next few slides here, just talk about the SOP, the standard operating procedure, just to make sure you guys are aligned to it. And then we'll have a small discussion on it for a couple of minutes as to which one you guys feel like is the better one, the better assessment for your clients. So specifically to the Rockport walk assessment here, this test is designed to estimate a cardiovascular starting point. What we do here, and guys, this is all from the book. What page was it on? My menu is covering it, 131. So with step number 1 here, you record the client's weight. You have them walk for 1 mile on the treadmill as fast as they can. And as fast as they can, what that means is they're not holding on to the side. Unless like it's like the safety is a major concern here, they shouldn't be holding on to the side. Now, let's just say, and I forgot who it was, I think it was Erica, not too long ago, last week, asked, well, what if they're an elite marathon runner like I am, Actually, Erica probably didn't say it like I am, but I'm going to add that in there. Should I have them run on the treadmill? What's the answer to that? Type in the chat board. If you have an elite endurance athlete, should they be running on the treadmill? Nope. Awesome. Erica, you did it. They should not be. Whoever said yes, they should not be running on the treadmill. They should stay walking. So even if they could walk fast, was that you, Hussein? Even if they could walk fast or run fast, make sure that they stay walking. After the 1 mile walk on the treadmill, you want to record the client's heart rate at that point and write down how long it took them to walk that mile. Utilize this formula. This formula, nope, you do not have to memorize it. NASM during an exam probably won't have to memorize it. They probably won't have to calculate anything as well. But what they might do is just ask for, what variables are part of the Rockport walk assessment. After you complete step 1.
Hang on, Zelig.
Yep.
Dalvin had a question. So I don't know if you want to just unmute real quick.
Pretty much, I was doing this assessment with one of my friends at Lifetime, and I wasn't very familiar with the Rockport or the YMCA assessment. Not to say that I didn't study it, but my memory wasn't working. So I pretty much had him run a mile. He didn't run a whole mile. He ran half a mile. And I was just trying to see if there was any support mechanisms he was using, if he was having a hard time running without having to hold on to the rails. He's an oversized person. So I was trying to just see how much he's capable of doing. And I just wanted to know if that was like the correct way of going about it. Obviously, I'm still learning. I'm just trying to make sure that that was a correct way of assessing that.
So if I'm hearing it properly, Dalvin, that's a great question. What I would probably do if I have an opportunity is reassess them just at walking. Now, if he was running while holding on, as you said, then I'd probably say it was too intense for him at that moment. Okay. So I don't know, Sheena, if you have something to add to that, but just kind of keeping some of those aspects in mind.
Yeah, I would agree. It is a walking assessment, which is kind of weird because you would think that you'd want someone to go as fast as possible, but you actually don't. You want them walking. So regardless of how fit they are, regardless of how in shape they are, it would always be a walking assessment. The other thing that you can do, Dalvin, instead of like having to go back and go through the reassessment with him, what you could do is just the next time you're training him, you could have him do this as his warm up and just do a little bit longer cardiovascular warm up. Do it walking, get your measurements, and then you would go into whatever you plan to do in the session after that so that you wouldn't have to just do the reassessment. That would be my recommendation.
Awesome.
Yes,
so Jody, to your question, some of your clients that are within an elder age group would not be able to clip the Rockport mile or 12-inch step. Jody, let's talk about that at the end after we go through the protocols. It'll be an interesting discussion that we might have. After we have calculated that long formula, sorry guys, trying to backtrack here. What happens is you're calculating for an estimated VO2 score. Within this estimated VO2 score here, what you want to utilize is the chart on the left-hand side to cross-reference what is their category as far as cardiovascular fitness. How you would classify it is you see that there is a male and female chart on the top and bottom. There is in the y-axis the y column the age, and then over the x column the classification: poor, fair, average, good, and very good. So simply take your estimated VO2 max score, cross-reference it to somebody that to somebody's category, and then based on their category, calculate what is their appropriate starting range. So for example, here, let's just hypothetically say I am 37 years old. So in that top chart there, between 35 and 39, I know my heart rate zone, my max, my estimated VO2 max is easily in the premium levels, the very good levels. So with that being said, I'm gonna say that it's like 56, probably off the chart technically. So it's gonna be very good, right? So what that means is based on step 3, type it in the chat board, folks. What is my appropriate starting category based on the fact that my classification is very good? Is it going to be poor, fair, average, good, or very good? And what are the associated zones? You guys got it. Rainer, awesome. Brittany, zone 3. That means that if you guys were to start training me, hypothetically, if you're my trainer, you could take me all the way up to zone 3 without any problem. In order to calculate zones properly, you take step 4, 220 minus your age, and then you multiply it by the percentages on the far right side. So with me being 37, 220 minus my age, what is that? 183, 190, 183, I think, is my heart rate max estimated. So for zone 1, I multiply 183 times 0.65. That'd be the low end of my zone 1. And then 183 times 0.75 would be the high end of my zone 1. Then do the same thing for zone 2 and zone 3. And then you would program your cardiovascular programs based on these 3 zones. Any questions on that? Type it in the chat board as we get into the YMCA step test. With the YMCA step test, again, we have the purpose here. And guys, I did write all the purposes on here just because I want to make sure you are familiar with them should they come up during an NASM exam. Any purpose or objective that you find in the book is a valid NASM exam question. So as you can see here with the YMCA step test, this test is designed to estimate an individual's cardiorespiratory fitness level on the basis of a sub-max bout of stair climbing at a pace for 3 minutes. Guys, this is the protocol for it. What we want is you should be setting up a 12-inch step. You should have a metronome. For any of you that do not know what a metronome is, it's essentially a device utilized in music to help maintain a certain beat or cadence. It's a 96 beats per minute. So all these variables, 3 minutes long, 12-inch step, 96 steps per minute. Again, these are great NASM exam questions, important that we go through the protocols today. So for what would happen is for 3 minutes, you would have the client go at 96 beats per minute. It essentially sounds like up, up, down, down, up, up, down, down. So it's really just marching over that 12-inch step. At the end of the 3 minutes, within 5 seconds of completion, you should find the client's heart rate, whether it be in the carotid pulse or the radial pulse, and then count it for 60 seconds. Now, could you count it for 10 seconds, multiply it by 6, count it for 15 seconds, multiply it by 4? I guess you could. As much as possible, you probably want to try to count it for the entire 60 seconds, as people's recovery heart rates tend to change over the course of the 60 seconds. Once you have recorded the recovery pulse, you want to locate the pulse utilizing the chart. So utilize that chart the same way as the Rockport Walk assessment. So let me give you a quick example here. You guys know that I am 37 years old, so I'm in that column right in the middle for males. Let's just pretend that my recovery pulse was 110 beats per minute. What category would I fall under? Type it in the chat board. I'm 37, I am a male, and I am at 110 beats per minute. Pulling up my chat. We are at, you guys are correct, below average. So hopefully you guys see that, but just to level set and show you guys, I am male, 37, so I'm between here. And as I said, hypothetically, my recovery is 110, so that would be below average. So any questions on that, type it in the chat board. And then once you figure out the classification, you would do steps 4 and 5 the exact same way as you did the Rockport Walk assessment. Awesome, I'm glad I annotated it, Christina, where you would figure out the classification. So based on being below average in this scenario, as you can see in step 4, my starting heart rate range or heart rate zone should be zone 1. What that means, I should not exceed zone 1 as part of my programming. And thus my zone 1 is my heart rate max, again, which is 183 beats per minute, 220 minus my age, 183 times 0.65, 183 times 0.75, and that would be my zone 1 range. So I'm gonna pause there. What questions do you guys have? How do you know when to move them to a new zone? Awesome, Rainer. How do we know if somebody's progressed? We answered that question at the beginning. How do you think that goes, Rainer? Come off mute. How do we know if somebody progressed?
Do the test
Maria,
again.
Yeah, you got it, reassessment. And that really, guys, that to that point, I love that question, Rainer, because that really validates the reason why we have to assess. Where you don't want to get caught, Rainer, or for everyone else, is somebody to ask you, well, is that better? Is that worse than what I did previously? And you don't have that record keeping. So keep that in mind. You guys got it, reassess.
Can I ask a question, Kelly? I'm kind of confused about one thing.
Yep.
Okay, so I love the fact that, you multiply, 220 minus your age by the percentages. So is that, so the heart rate reserve formula, so if we're going by that, I mean, what do you recommend we do? Do the heart rate reserve formula, or we go by this, just take their, because
220 minus your age, stick to the protocol.
minus their age and then multiply it by the percentage, and that's it.
Correct.
Okay, all right, then good. Okay, good, that's what I need to know. Thank you.
Leo, come off mute. Let me know what your question is.
So with everything in today's society and how people are with transgenders specifically, would you test them based on what their gender was like at birth or what their new gender is? I know it's kind of weird, but I know there's a few transgenders, at least at the club that I work at.
Such a great question. And I honestly, I don't know that I have a great answer to it. My initial reaction would probably be their biological identification at birth, but that's a fantastic question. I think we'll have to dive a little bit deeper into that to really get a good answer for you.
I was going to gravitate towards the same direction as Sheena gang, just based on their and I don't know if it's me being ignorant, but just based on the biology and physiology of what gender they are born with, I think it would apply towards them a little bit more accurately. But let's try to dig into that question, Sheena, offline and see if we can get a valid response from somebody and maybe naz them.
Thank you. So I just want to say really quickly though, like, thank you for asking that question, Leo, because one of the things that I think is incredibly important is being an inclusive coach and really being able to adapt your coaching style and your coaching, all of it, your coaching philosophy, everything to your client. And that's such a fantastic question to really have that top of mind. So thank you for asking.
Yeah, 100% agree.
And then Rainer did ask a question that I do think is relevant, and I would like to bring up really quickly now, Zelig, as well, because it's so relevant to like real life. So you reassess and your client is not progressing. How does that convo go, especially if it happens multiple times? And this is like kind of a can of worms question because we could really dive down a rabbit hole, but this comes back to the importance of having reassessments for multiple different things. So if you're looking at cardiovascular, if you're looking at resistance, if you're looking at flexibility, if you're looking at core, if you're looking at all of these different components for their program and you're reassessing a lot of different things, chances are they're progressing in a lot of different areas. The other thing that I would say is that's where the accountability piece to this entire thing comes in. Making sure that you're understanding what's going to keep your client on track and having conversations consistently about the habits and behaviors that they're implementing into their plan. What are they doing? What are they not doing? What are their barriers to actually following through with some of these things to be able to do that? Definitely, I could probably spend an hour on this topic by itself. And at some point I probably will on a focus hour because it's so important, but short answer, that's what I got.
Yep, and I agree with Sheena. Like we could literally talk about this for an hour and a half. I just typed something real quick on the chat board just to get a little bit in there. But it is tough conversations, right? Because you don't want to seem like you're not helping your client. You don't want the client to feel like they're not doing the right things that you prescribe them and or ask them to do. So it's really just having a very open and vulnerable conversation of, hey, what's happening here? Because you'll be surprised if you were to just set those expectations properly and say like, hey, Sheena, I mean, I know we've been going for X amount of weeks now or X amount of months and we haven't seen progress. Is there something going on outside of here that might be stopping you from achieving your fitness goals? And just see kind of what they have to say. You know, it could be sleep, it could be work, it could be eating, it could be not doing the homework, it could be a lot of things.
And I think that to that point too, the other, how I transition that conversation is also putting the ownership back on them to say, exactly what Zelig just said. You know, we've been working towards this goal. I know that you've been struggling with some components of the program. Is this still a top priority for you? I know you mentioned when we got started 3 weeks ago that you had a trip coming up. You were really excited about losing some body fat, getting back down to a size 8, whatever it is that still a top priority for you? And are you still really devoted to achieving this goal? And if they say yes, fantastic. Okay, so what can we do? How can we modify the plan to really get you back on track? Or no, it's not. I'm going through a divorce. I've got this. Okay, great. So what do you need right now? Just what do you feel is realistic for you to commit to right now to maintain? Is your goal maintenance, or is your goal, looking forward and achieving that goal? Because the fact of the matter is people still have to live their life around achieving their fitness goals. So there may come times where maintenance for a couple weeks is the target, and then they want to ramp back up. Such a good question.
It is. Last thing I'll say, because I don't know if we addressed it between Sheena and I, Maria, but Maria, it's no one's fault. It's not the trainer's fault. It's not the client's fault, assuming everyone is doing their due diligence and we're just not being negligent towards the client. Okay, guys, so protocol, we just talked about that. Really, when it comes down to it, I just want to get some quick chatter on the chat board, but which assessment is more advantageous or more disadvantageous, and or which one's better for your clients? So type in the chat board a quick response here. I don't want to spend more than 2 minutes on this, and then we'll wrap up this segment before we move on to the next.
Well, I would say the disadvantage for like the step test was like, you have people at different heights and things like that. Like, you have someone who's like 6'5" doing that step test, and then someone who's like 5'6", and that could be a disadvantage, right there, because it may not be as challenging for the person who's like 6'4" or something like that.
Okay, so who was that? Was that you, Barry?
Yeah. Okay.
I'm
sorry, my camera's not working. I'm sorry.
The dial up again, I get it. But is it, so did you say the YMCA step, or was it the Rockport?
The step.
Okay, got it. Okay, excellent. I'm getting a lot of YMCA on the chat board as well. Dante says depends on the client, but I prefer the YMCA step test. I'd use the Rockport for those in very poor shape. The test may be more of a safety concern depending on the client. Good points there, Lauren, if they have injuries. And guys, to give you the proper answer, there is no right answer. The best answer that I like on here is with Dante saying it really depends on the client. Some clients, they might feel really comfortable walking for 20 minutes on approximately 15, 20 minutes, maybe 25, 30 minutes, depending on the condition. But that's a lot of time on a client's feet, where 3 minutes is very fast, but then you have to think about the 12-inch step and consider that for your population, depending on their limitations. So at the end of the day, just listen to your client and figure out what might be the best assessment for them. Now, I didn't see too much responses based on the advantages and disadvantages of these assessments, but just kind of think about them, especially as all of you turn into fitness professionals. These two assessments are extremely resourceful. You really don't need much materials. You don't need a gym to go to facilitate these assessments. You can do it in your home, at their home. You could do it at their gym, at Lifetime. You could do a Rockport walk assessment as long as you have a GPS tracker outside where you walk with them for 1 mile. So very helpful from that point, very advantageous because it doesn't cost too much as opposed to having to buy an entire treadmill. So just kind of keep those items in mind, as many of you may or may not be working for Lifetime.
Yeah, I typed this in the chat box, but one thing that I also want to add is ask the client what they typically do. If they walk a lot, have them do the Rockport walk test. If they do step class or they do the stairs a lot, then have them do the YMCA step test, because that's going to give you a better depiction of where their cardiovascular system is.
Thanks for that. And Sheena. All right, guys, we're going to quickly transition here. So if you feel like you need to, if we bored you for the last 45 minutes, need to stand up, get the blood flowing, go ahead and do so. But we're going to be doing a quick transition here, where really we're not going to go into too much of the single leg squat assessment, but simply Sheena and I, we are going to demonstrate the facilitation of it. And then you guys are going to go into your breakouts and practice amongst each other. So as you can see there, purpose again is another source of feedback used for clients who have the goal of altering body composition as far as single leg squat assessment. Oh, yeah, sorry, that was kicked back to the overhead. That was, I didn't delete that from the circumference girth measurements. So I apologize on that. don't worry. This is not a body composition assessment. That's my bad there. But essentially to assess a client's underactive and overactive muscles for the sake of programming. That's going to be a little bit more accurate. When you go to chapter 6, you'll be able to see this table and the chart and the figure on the right-hand side here. So just keep those in mind, just because like any other movement assessment, you want to be able to memorize the underactive and overactive muscles for your NASM exam. So Sheena and I go through this tell, show, do process. Guys, think back to the soft skills, because what will happen once we go into your breakouts, this is going to be the directions, kind of per usual, but things to keep in mind as you're in your breakouts. So Sheena, are you ready to rock? Sheena, you don't need that much water because it's just going to be a one set assessment here. I'm
I
just
gotta
teasing you.
finish my gallon.
I know. All right, go. So I know Sheena has a little bit more real estate than I do, but you guys will get the point just based on movements here. But I'm going to start off. Remember, I'm going to tell her first what I'm expecting and what I'm looking for. I'm going to show her, and then she's actually going to do it. In this assessment world, other things to keep in mind is during the single leg squat assessment, there's only one vantage point. It's from the front. There's only one kinetic chain checkpoint, which is the knee. So could you make additional observations? You can 100%, but when it comes to the NASM CPT, that's the only kinetic chain checkpoint they're looking for. If you were to do the corrective exercise specialization in the future, there's different vantage points from the side and from the back as well. And we talk about hips and the shoulders, but right now we're just talking about the knee. So to get this kicked off here, Sheena, what we're gonna do is the single leg squat assessment. In order to do the single leg squat assessment, this is what I want you to do. Don't do anything quite yet, but essentially what we're gonna be assessing are things like your neuromuscular control, your dynamic flexibility, your core strength, and at the end of the day, I just wanna make sure you don't have any muscle imbalances or underactive, overactive muscles that I haven't seen yet. So what I'm gonna have you do, Sheena, is I'm gonna have you stand first with your feet shoulder width apart, keep your chest up, look straight ahead, and you could either keep your hands on your hips or to the side. You're gonna slowly just pick up one foot. So you guys can't see this, but I'm picking up one foot, just keeping it off the ground. And as you squat down on one leg, you can do this for about 5 repetitions on each side while I take some notes based on your movement. After 5, you shake it off a little bit, switch sides, and then I'll observe you doing squats from the other side. So when this happens, gang, or Sheena, whenever you're ready, feel free to do that.
Yeah, so Zelig, if you want to, sorry, they were like mowing when I started. So I had my garage door down and you can't see very well. So I just opened it. But if you want to stop sharing the screen and make our, pin our videos so that it's easier to see, let me just. Okay, there we go.
That looks great. Oh, Sheena, I went through the entire explanation already.
I know.
So do you want me to go through it again?
No, you did the tell, show, do, but are you gonna actually like tell me what to do now?
Correct. Yeah, so go ahead and place your hands on your hips. Excellent. Take one foot just fully off the ground. Perfect. And then from there, look straight ahead and give me 5 squats as I take my template and I write down any observations. So go ahead and observe Sheena. She does these 5 squats. And what we're looking for here is for any knee valgus, meaning is her knee crashing in and going towards the midline of her body. When you look at this, gang, give me just a couple more there, Sheena. Really, just like all the other assessments, overhead squat, static postural assessment, it's either you see it or you don't. And essentially, there's no right or wrong answer, but you just want to indicate and mark down what you do see. Go ahead and start, Sheena. Perfect. And essentially, gang, that would be it. Yeah, that's a great observation, Maria. So what I want you guys to do is, now you have seen how the single leg squat is facilitated. Let me share my PowerPoint again, just as a reminder of what the ask is. But
For sure, Troy.
based on, and the breakout rooms are now open, but take a picture of this, gang. Take a picture of the directions on here. Make sure you've assigned a breakout leader. One person should facilitate the assessment. One of you should be the client of whoever the trainer is, and then reflect on the entire experience. Feel free to write down, was the knee crashing in? Did you see knee valgus or not? It is 2:51, so you guys have 9 minutes to break this out. We'll come back in the main room and talk about it, the experiences. Sheena, if you want to take the odds, I'll take the evens this time. And 3 o'clock, we'll be back in the main room. Go ahead and go into your breakouts.
Come here. Go run. We'll be in 3.
So I would love to just kind of start conversation as people are coming back in. Because I wrote down a couple of notes, but does anyone want to share maybe observations or what was the takeaway as part of the experience, whether you observed or were part of it?
Yeah, I just want to share that in our chat room, I noticed like Kelsey did a really good job of like cueing and walking. I forgot his name, I'm sorry. Walking him through like the process.
Awesome. Yeah, great takeaway. Appreciated that. Who was that? Christina, I think. That's great, because as we've been talking about, setting those the proper expectations through proper communication is key. Kelsey, I'll provide you some feedback. I'm not sure if you saw in the chat board, but don't forget to show what you expect of the client. I'm glad you saw that. Other feedback. Who else noticed something?
Do you mean from the other breakouts or from a specific breakout class? I didn't know.
From the single leg squat breakout.
Okay. I noticed that, well, for me personally, I noticed that it's kind of hard to tell whether or not someone is like losing balance, or like if that's the reason that their knees are turning inwards. I was going to ask you that, but we didn't really have a lot of time. Someone was like perfect balance, go down perfectly, but on the release, on the up, it would then turn inwards. Does that still still count as the same thing, or is that a balance issue?
Let me address both of those questions. That's a great question, Dalvin. And I think I talked about it with group 4 because they had the same concern. It's a valid concern. So the question is it somebody losing balance, or is it an imbalance, an underactive, overactive muscle? And the way I answered it is really through experience. You'll have a better eye towards those things. Many times if somebody doesn't have very good balance, as soon as they lift up their legs, they're falling over already. And the fact of the matter is, if somebody has an imbalance, so the underactive, overactive muscles like tight adductors and the knee is crashing in, it's going to happen for the majority of the squats. So I would probably say then, Dalvin, with your person where you kept on seeing it, there's no harm in making the observation of knee crashing in. At the end of the day, the overactive muscles that you're going to alleviate, to lengthen those muscles, there's no harm in the program design because of it. So hopefully that answers your question. And another thing we talked about in group 4, and this is Sheena's forte, typically we show like a TRX single leg squat. And Sheena's gonna set it up, I knew it. And so the question was from group number 4 is, if you help them squat, let's just say if they're holding on to maybe a pole, TRX strap, to help them single leg squat and eliminate the lack of balance, any type of imbalance, so exactly what Sheena's doing now. Let me spotlight her for the group. Sheena, do it again for me, because I was talking and they were probably seeing me.
Yeah, I was just checking my camera to make sure that the view was okay before we did that. I want to add really quickly, I would say for 98% of my clients, this is exactly what I do. for the majority of my clients, I'm not doing a freestanding single leg squat because, to your point, Dalvin, most people do not have the balance to be able to execute it. So it's really hard to see, is this a balance issue or is it an actual muscular imbalance? So for most people, this is what I do, is a lot of like TRX work, and we'll walk through that a little bit more towards the end of it. But I want to show you guys just the difference. So I'm going to do just freestanding. Can you see my knee okay, Zelig? So freestanding, you can see it kind of cave in a little bit, right? TRX, now I've got the balance piece, right? That's kind of hard to see at that angle. Let me see if I can move it over a little bit. Let's try that. So it takes the balance element out of it, and it's truly a matter of like, can they complete the exercise? It's also incredibly scalable. So if they can't do it with their foot off the ground, I'll have them keep that opposite toe on the ground, still doing a single leg squat. The other thing I want to highlight before we move on is keep in mind that we're going to be doing multiple different assessments and putting all those together. So chances are, if you see something in the overhead squat, you're going to see the same types of things in the single leg squat and the push-pull assessments. So if you're seeing upper body stuff, you're going to see it in static posture, overhead squat, push-pull assessments. If you see something lower body, you're probably going to see it static postural assessment, overhead squat, single leg squat, because you're not going to be able to pinpoint every single underactive and overactive muscle and address them all at the same time. So we're going to look globally. Okay, these are all the assessments that we've done. This is all the information that we've gathered. Now, where do I really want to start and hone in with my programming, which we'll talk about, but I want you guys to understand, like, all of this is going to fit into like the big picture of programming.
All right. I think we answered all questions, or who had a follow-up? Unmute or continue. Okay. I think we.
My apologies, sir. My apologies.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna ask Sheena, because I was seeing the way she was doing when she acquired the balance ropes to go perfectly down and up. I forgot my question because I interrupted you. You know what? I'm gonna just come back to it later, sir. My apologies.
No, Dalvin, you're good. I think your question might be like, is it still a valid assessment? From my experience, even if they're holding on to something to help them balance, any type of imbalance, underactive, overactive muscle is still going to show. So I don't know if that helps trigger your question and whatnot, but definitely type it in the chat board, and that's probably more my fault than your fault as far as me throwing you off. All right.
So Zelig, I would say let's because I know we're on a tight timeline. If you guys have questions, type them in the chat. I'll answer them in the chat while Zelig moves forward, just so that we make sure we get everything covered today.
Cool. All right. And you guys are asking awesome questions. So Sheena and I definitely appreciate it. That definitely tells us that you guys are thinking about that experience. Next assessments, these assessments, the push-pull assessment, yes, it is a standardized assessment for any SM, but this is one assessment that I constantly do almost on a regular basis with clients, meaning any type of pushing movement, whether it's on cables, on bands, push-ups, dumbbell chest presses, if they're showing the same movement patterns per kinetic chain checkpoint, I'm still going to address it. So these assessments I like a lot. Pushing assessment, like the overhead squat and single leg squat. This assessment assesses movement efficiency and potential muscle imbalances during the pushing movement. And the other one, the pull assessment, is during the pulling assessment. In your learning wells, you will see Sally go through the pushing and pulling assessment, in which you guys will have other knowledge checks. The knowledge check questions, I would say, are probably a little bit more challenging. So if you have questions on them, let me know, just because it requires you to have a really keen eye on any type of pushing or pulling movement. But when it comes to the protocol and or the kinetic chain checkpoints, guys, essentially what you do is you stagger your client's stance. You show them how to do the pushing movement if they don't know how to do the pushing movement, and Sheena and I will demonstrate. And you have them push or pull for 20 repetitions. What you're looking for, the kinetic chain checkpoints you're looking for, is the head and neck. So as you can see in 6.44 are the shoulders elevating. 6.45 on the left is the head migrating forward. And then on 6.43 is the low back arching. So really all the connection checkpoints on the upper half of the body. Utilizing template 2 and or figure 6.46, you just check off if you see any of those movement patterns. Based on the movement patterns you see, you would utilize a table found on the bottom to figure out what are the potential underactive or overactive muscles. Utilize those underactive and overactive muscles as part of your programming to alleviate any tight muscles or strengthen any underactive or lengthened muscles. So what we want to do here is we're going to take Sheena through this push-pull assessment. I want you guys to utilize the template tool to really make your notes. If you did not print out or download template 2, it's in front of you, and you could really just use a piece of paper and pen next to you. But look at her hips to see if the low back is excessively arching. Look at her shoulders to see if the shoulder is elevating, and look at the head and neck if the head and neck is moving forward. Based on your notes, when you go back to your breakouts, discuss your observations. Some of you might see the same thing. Some of you might see something that no one else saw, which is absolutely okay. So the practice here is observing. Based on all of your collective observations, type or write down on the bottom, so whoever the recorder is or the group leader, what are the potential overactive and underactive muscles? What that means is you're going to have to go to table 6.14, 6.15, and reference these charts to write down what are the underactive or overactive muscles. So with that being said, does anyone have any, or actually what will happen is Sheena and I are going to demonstrate. So I'm going to take this down for the moment, and I'm going to spotlight Sheena. I'm going to spotlight myself as well. And we're going to demo. If you guys have any questions from here, before you go into your breakout, just ask away. All right, so Sheena, let me tell Shodu first. What you're gonna do, Sheena, is we're gonna do a pushing assessment. And guys, for the sake of time, we're just gonna demo one pushing. The pulling is exactly the same, but just from a pulling motion instead. But Sheena, what we're gonna do here is we're gonna do a pushing assessment. With the pushing assessment, really is just another way for me to evaluate potential underactive or overactive muscles for when I write out the programs in the future. What's gonna happen here is you're gonna utilize the cables. I want your feet shoulder width apart in a split stance. You're gonna raise your arms about shoulder level, keep your head and neck facing forward, and you're gonna press forward in this controlled fashion for approximately 20 repetitions. So at this medium tempo here, 20 repetitions, just keep pushing the cable in the comfort until I tell you to stop. And I'll be taking notes and making observations based on your movement. Do you have any questions before we begin, Sheena?
Nope.
Excellent. So go ahead and grab the cables there, stand feet shoulder width apart, then put one foot in front of the other, or band. Thank you, Kate, stand with the band. And from there, Sheena, any way we could take off your blur by chance?
The what?
The blur in your background filter? Do you know how to do that? Click on the up caret next to stop video, choose video filter, and then select none.
Not working.
No.
Oh wait,
Okay.
hang on.
Boom, perfect. Dang, Sheena, how many kettlebells do you take from Lifetime? Holy cow.
Hey, I bought all those before Lifetime even had them. We had to bring our kettlebells into work.
I fired up Sheena, guys. All right, guys, so observe Sheena's connect chains, her hips, shoulders, head. Doing great, Sheena. Give me about 5 more here. And go ahead and relax. All right, gang. So what we're gonna do here, that's a pushing assessment. Again, the pulling assessment is the same. Or Sheena, do you want to do a quick pulling assessment so they
Yeah.
have more to go by? Let's do that. We won't go through the tell, show, do, because obviously you guys understand that process now. So in this angle, guys, so it's harder to see her lumbopelvic hip complex. So what we could probably evaluate here is her, maybe her head, and then probably her shoulders. Oh, that's great. go 5 more, Sheena. Make any notes if you see any, gang. All right. Nice job, Sheena. You can put those down. All right, wrap up your notes, gang. Go ahead and I think the breakout rooms are still, oh, I've reopened the breakout rooms. Go ahead and discuss in your breakout any underactive or overactive or movement patterns that you may have saw, and then write out what are the underactive and overactive muscles per chapter 6. If you have any questions, stick around.
I don't know how to get.
Maria, let me try to assign you because, oh, here, I got you. Maria, do you remember which breakout you were in before? Give me your fingers.
She was in 1.
She was 1, okay. You should have access now, Maria.
What happened, Rob?
I do not know. I came back and it was just me.
All right, I will. Well, because it's not time to come back yet.
Oh, I thought we got the like indication to come back. Okay.
He said 3 minutes.
Oh,
Yeah, so you guys
send me
can,
back.
you guys- he said 3 minutes. So you guys can go back into your breakout. You still got some time.
Oh, okay, so I can join from here.
Yeah, you should just be able to click join. If you click on breakout rooms again, you should be able to join.
All right, welcome back, gang. And I would love to get the chatter started here. What observations did you guys see or discuss in your breakouts?
I can start. We had an update. So for the polling assessment, we really didn't see a thing. We thought that she did a really good job. But there's one thing that we saw during the pushing assessment where her shoulders kind of elevated a little bit, I would say, towards the beginning. And that is probably due to an underactive mid to lower trap muscle. And then I actually had to look it up because I didn't know exactly where this muscle was, but it makes so much sense. The levator scapula, which is kind of like the muscle right here at the neck, I would say is like more active, or an overactive muscle that's like bringing her shoulders up and like tugging at her neck a little bit.
I have that problem.
Excellent. Nick, appreciate the comments there and getting us started there. And so to a couple things that you said, number one, it's okay if you see nothing. And I think I may have seen some stuff on the chat board where Sheena's row or push was too perfect. And if that's the case, if you didn't see anything, it's okay to not write anything onto your template, and just indicate it as no muscle balance. The pushing and pulling assessment isn't the only assessment that you guys are doing, as all of you now know. So just because you don't see it in the pushing pulling assessment doesn't mean it might not reflect in another assessment. There's another thing that you said that I want to comment on as well. I can't remember what it was, but I do see some things on the chat board. As far as, sorry guys, my chat board is moving slowly. Sheena, anything that you may have seen in the groups that you visited?
The tie-in with group number one of the core muscular system and tying that back to what we learned on Tuesday night. So I gave him a little pop quiz, thanks to Barry, on local and global systems.
I love it. Nice job. And that's how we should be thinking, right? We should be tying in a lot of our assessments into, how can we become more functional utilizing some of those movement systems and or local global stabilizers. So nice job, Barry and crew there. I love what group 4 was asking, and I think I saw it on the chat board. And sorry, I can't really keep up with the chat board gang, but Dalvin, I'm going to have you unmute yourself. And what was the question that you posed the group here? Because I think it's a valid question.
I think I asked them if they saw her head going forward. Well, I don't know which one you were referring to, but I asked 3 different things. I asked, one, did they see her head moving forward while her neck was stationary? It seemed like her head was moving a little forward. I don't know. And then I saw the shoulders elevated a little bit whenever she would release. And it seemed as if her shoulders are a little stiff. And then the last thing I saw was I wasn't able to see the actual back of her neck or the back of her body to get a good placement of her hips and all that.
Awesome, Dalvin, I appreciate that. And
well,
I don't know if you guys—
I have to share personally. So yes, Dalvin. And also my neck has been bothering me really bad. I think I've been sleeping on it wrong the last few days. So you probably did see that because I wasn't purposefully trying to do it absolutely correct, but I could feel my neck tensing up as I was doing it. So you probably did see my head doing something and my neck doing something different because I know what I'm supposed to be doing. So subconsciously I was trying to, but my neck is also bothering me a little bit. So
also, I just wanted to say, I'm not trying to prey on your downfall. I'm just glad I got something right. I feel so bad for you. I'm sorry.
But here's the beauty of it is if I'm your client, Dalvin, and you're asking those questions, here are my observations. Are you experiencing any neck pain? Actually, yes, I am over, whatever. So I think the curious questions that you guys are asking right now, ask those with your clients too, because it's going to give you a ton of insight and a ton of really useful information. So I love it.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to piggyback off that because I 100% agree with what Sheena was saying. You guys right now, you guys need the feedback of you guys are asking the right questions, and you guys are. So bring that with confidence when you guys are actually training with your clients. So Dalvin, I saw that fist pump much warranted on that fist pump that you did earlier, because that was a good observation. And I do want to comment on your last question or comment that you had within the group. It was really just placement, where Sheena was placed, and it was hard to see the lumbopelvic hip complex, especially during the row. I don't know if you guys noticed that or were thinking that in your head, but that's a valid thought. I was telling Delvin and his crew that had it been a real virtual training session, I would have totally asked her to move herself so I could see that complete lateral view. And that goes to then Kelsey's comment on the chat board. Whether you're in person and or doing a virtual training session, you should be getting multiple vantage points. When it comes to the assessment processes specifically, there are obviously the kinetic chain checkpoints that you should be looking for per the operating procedure. Thus, in the pushing pulling assessment, everything comes from the lateral view. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to be walking around here in a real life situation, just trying to observe other things. All other assessment processes, all in-session experiences, sets that I'm taking my clients through, I'm constantly walking around them. I'm not just standing there like this and watching them. That's what you don't want to do.
So that's a great point. And I feel like we talk about this a lot. And so I want to highlight it is Zelig and I both, regardless of what the assessment says, if the assessment says lateral view, anterior view, I'm always doing lateral, anterior, posterior. I'm always doing a circle. And I have my clients typically stay where they are. I walk in a circle or like a mostly circle, depending on like what exercise they're doing. So I can see from multiple different angles because I'll see different things depending on where I'm standing and in relationship to the exercise that they're doing. So great question, Kelsey. And the answer is yes. I would argue that like almost every single assessment I have my clients do, I am assessing from a 360 view, even if the assessment protocol doesn't say to.
Great questions on the chat board. Hussein asked a question, do you use a heavier resistance band if the client seems to be pushing or pulling too easy? And then Sarah asked, what resistance do you recommend? So with that question, gang, if I have a client that has an older training age, meaning that they've been training or doing exercise for a longer period of time, they know what kind of pushing weight they do specifically on the cable or band, I might just ask them and then go maybe like 75% of that. What you don't want to do is pick something so heavy where they can't complete 20 repetitions without compensating anyways because it's so heavy. But to Hussein's point, if you go too light, you won't see anything because it's too light. If you have a beginner that doesn't know what weight to use, always err on the side of caution. At the end of the day, if they go through 20 repetitions and they're just repping it out and they can do another 20 repetitions, probably too easy. And then it's valid to do maybe a second set, maybe with a little bit more resistance. So Sheena, do you have a best practice there you might want to share?
Of course I do. So typically, I already said this, and I'll probably say it a lot more times before we finish up. Typically what I do, and this is like this is either a complimentary session. So typically the way that I get clients is through a complimentary session. In my complimentary session, I'm doing the assessment, the cardio assessment as my warm up. So I do like the Rockport walk test typically as my warm up. And then I would do a push, pull, and single leg squat in that complimentary session as well. And the way that I do that is with the TRX. That's like practical application, real life. You don't have to do it that way, okay? The reason I do it that way is I love that the TRX is very easy to progress and regress very quickly. So if I see in the first couple reps, all right, their form looks great, they don't really have any major imbalances, then I can progress it, have them step forward or back, depending on the exercise that we're doing, so that they still feel like they're getting a really good workout. If I'm using cables, I'm typically going to do about 5 pounds, or if it's a dual cable, I'll do like 10 for a female, the lightest weight it goes. A couple reps, how does that feel? Feels good. Okay, awesome. We go ahead and do it. If it's a male, I'll typically do 10 pounds, or if it's a double, I'll do 20 pounds. How does that feel? Couple reps, form looks good. Okay, we'll use that. I typically start out as light as the weight will go for females. Test it out. If it's too easy for them, I progress. I would always rather progress than regress. So I'm going to start easy and then make it more challenging as need be. But in real life, I typically use the TRX just because I can do all of that. And I can also multitask it as a complimentary session.
All right, guys, this will be the last question we'll take in for the pushing and pulling assessments. But if you have other questions, write them down and email your online instructor. Great question again, Hussein. What if a client has shoulder and neck injury? Would you still advise them to do a pushing and pulling assessment? Guys, this is the fact of the matter. Pushing and pulling doesn't go away in life. Like, I don't know somebody that never pushes and pulls regardless of a neck and head injury. So unless a doctor and or physical therapist says, no, you cannot do these movements, like I would encourage them doing it. Maybe not at an intense level initially, but even with any type of neck injury, particularly, like it's going to be the opposing muscles that are on the upper back that helps with good posture. That's going to alleviate a lot of the pains that your client is probably feeling. My guess is if you were to collaborate with their physical therapist, they'd probably give you the same types of posterior chain exercises for them to do with a head or neck injury. So Hussein, I like where your mindset is at, but then just because somebody has a limitation, definitely collaborate with a medical professional of theirs if they're comfortable. But I would not just put it to rest immediately just because they say I'm injured there, if that makes sense. Sheena, do you have I'm sure you have a thought there.
And I promise this is my last comment, because the other thing that we have to think about is like, think about real life, guys. If someone works in, let's say it's a nurse or a doctor who works in a hospital setting and they have push and pull doors, that door that they're pushing or pulling open weighs more than a light resistance band. So most of the activities that they're doing in daily life are going to be more intensive than the Rockport walk test, than the push-pull assessment, single leg squat, you know, maybe not depending on what we're doing there. But to Zelig's point, like it's not like we're loading this up. So if we were doing like a cable chest press, absolutely, Hussein, that's where I would really like reconsider if that makes sense for that client. But during the assessment process, you're not using a ton of load, you're not using a ton of weight, you're more just looking at their movement patterns. So for most people, it is going to be safe to do. But again, make sure that they do have that clearance before doing it.
All right. How are you guys doing? You guys feeling okay? You guys ready to power through the last 28 minutes? Give me a yay or nay on the chat board. I mean, it's going to happen no matter what, but I just want to get your energy level. We're caught up on time. It's not like we're rushing on time anymore. And I think Sheena and we both love the discussion. You guys are absolutely retaining the information and asking all the right questions. So keep it coming. Appreciate all the feedback on the chat board. But this is going to be our last segment. And this is, again, another great opportunity for all of you just to practice your in-session experiences. Sheena and I are going to go in the rooms again and interject as appropriate. But what we want to do, and we kind of teed it up on Tuesday, so hopefully you've been somewhat thinking about it. But at the end of chapter, what is the core chapter? Chapter 8? I can't remember, but page 235.
Chapter 9.
Chapter 9, thank you, Rainer. At the end of the core chapter, chapter 9, provides different core exercises. And we're thinking about if we wanted to assign you guys certain like stabilization, strength, or core exercises. I'm going to leave it up to you guys in your breakout groups. With the remaining, call it 15 minutes we have. We'll go 15 minutes breakout, 15 minutes discussion on your experiences and providing all of you feedback. But you should be able to get at least one, if not two different role plays in. So same thing as all the other breakouts. Aside on 2 volunteers, one is a trainer, one is a client, and what core exercise they're going to facilitate. I know, I'm sure many of you have like different core exercises that you absolutely love in your own personal workouts. Stick to the ones in the book. If you don't have the materials, like if you're doing a power exercise that requires a medicine ball, just mimic it like you had a medicine ball, but stick to the ones in the book. The reason being is we want you to be familiar with those exercises, because I would not be surprised if NASM references them during your NASM exam. So just to be familiar with those core exercises, stick to the ones in the book. But the trainer is going to tell, show, do, so the client or the other student in this situation. And then everyone else should be providing feedback, positive feedback, constructive feedback. And keep in mind, if you're the trainer, all the soft skills that we discussed. Are you setting expectations well? Are you tell, showing, and doing properly? Are you asking for feedback and or understanding? Make it all together. And if you're really good, table 9.3 in front of you, utilize the acute variables. That type of process is part of the in-session experience. So express, all right, you're gonna do X amount of sets, X amount of reps at this tempo, and then I'm gonna have you rest for X amount of seconds afterwards. Does anyone have any questions based on this? All right. I'm gonna open up the breakout rooms again. It's 3:35 on my clock. So let's go maybe like 10 to 12 minutes. When we go in the breakout rooms, we'll get a pulse, but 3:45 to 3:47, we'll come back together and we'll share.
Hey, Zelig, sir, can you hear me?
No, I cannot hear you. I'm just
Oh,
kidding.
nice. Oh, I do have to take my mother to the appointment. I was gonna ask you, before I go, is there anything that you needed to tell me that I need to look forward to next week? Because I do need to take her, and I just want to make sure that I'm on top of things before I leave.
I think you're good to go. There's nothing like pressing or due necessarily. So after this, after we do a discussion, we're just gonna do a recap of what's coming up over the next week. So you can probably just listen to the last 10 minutes of the recording. You're not gonna miss anything that is too heavy or anything.
Yes, sir. Thank you. By the way, I appreciate all the information, and I'm gonna keep working at it, sir. Thank you.
Yep, you're the man. All right, so as everyone comes back from the breakout, who wants to step forward and just gonna provide some thoughts and feedback of what you observed? And I probably, depending on how much time left, I'd love for somebody to step up and kind of showcase their skills in front of the group. But I'll take any types of observations or feedback that you guys observed first and foremost. If you were a trainer in one of the experiences, how did you feel? Let's start there. Were you confident, not confident?
I was not confident.
Nervous for sure.
You're nervous, Lauren? Is that what was happening?
Yes,
Did I hear
I
you?
just found like I was stumbling over my words in trying to verbally explain how to do the exercise. It was much easier to, like, when I was physically showing her what to do, but actually putting that into words, I just found a little bit more challenging.
Yeah, I appreciate that share, Lauren, and that vulnerability there. How many of you, whether you were a trainer during the last 10 minutes or even onto your own when you're practicing your skill sets, that happens to you, where you just kind of fall over your words, you know what to say, you just don't say it right? Because I guarantee Lauren's not the only one.
No,
Here's the thing though, and why tell, show, do is so powerful for you as a coach as well, is if you're demonstrating, you're just explaining what you're doing. So even if you don't have all the words, it's like, okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to lay down on the floor, you lay down on the floor, and then we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this. So like, as you're doing it, it helps you remember what the steps are. So that's also a value of tell, show, do, is it helps you to remember how you want to explain things. It is much harder to explain something when you're not physically doing it. So another huge value of just that tell, show, do process.
Hey, I have a question on that line, Sheena.
Go ahead.
So the question came up, and I thought it might have been a good question for the group, and I think it is because you just kind of talked about it. So tell, show, do. Is it supposed to be tell, show, do, or tell, show, do? Did that make any sense? I don't think I just made sense, but.
Yeah, no, I totally get what you're saying. So I typically will do a really high level overview, and then I will tell, show, do, like I'll tell show at once and then he does. So like Zelig, we're going to do a floor bridge now. Floor bridge is great for really activating some of those underactive muscles. I'm going to then get on the floor and I'm going to tell and show at the same time. And then he's going to do, and I'm going to coach and cue while he's doing. Great question.
Yeah, and I want to add to that, Rainer. I think with more practice and proficiency from all of you, that tell and show almost becomes one thing before they actually do it. So right now we're almost breaking it up purposely, where we want you to really verbalize it, then show it, and then do it at the same point. But it almost becomes one experience when you're actually much more proficient. So great question. All right, Sheena, was there any observations that you want to point out that you may have seen while you were visiting?
So I would like for, let's go with Maria, because she was the one who kind of got us started on the topic. Maria, I want you to kind of share the mini rabbit hole that we went down with your group when we were talking about the core exercises.
Okay, so Sheena threw out a test for us right there. We had to decide if we were doing local or global stabilization. And in our group, I think Brittany did a great job describing the floor bridge to Rob, which a floor bridge is, it's hard to explain what you want the person to do. So she did a great job explaining that. And it was a good time for us in the group to bring out that drawing in maneuver in the bridge position. And, you know, being a group fitness instructor, you know, when I'm teaching my classes, it's always whenever we get down in that bridge position, I always talk about, you know, pressing your back into the mat, pulling your belly button all the way into your spine. So it sets them up, and the core is already fired up for when the exercise begins with the bridge. You know, we use that bridge a lot in a class that we do that's for all lower body. And we use the bridge position, you know, so you're working the core, but you're also engaging your, because Rob was saying like his quads were hurting, you know, doing that bridge. So it involves a lot of the other muscles as well in that position. So.
Maria, I love that share, and thanks, Sheena, for pointing out Maria. And one thing I will say, because you talked about like the drawing in maneuver, and I know in some of my breakout groups you talk about bracing. I heard a lot of engaging the abs. Guys, that especially that drawing in maneuver, I can't even tell you how much of a moneymaker that's been for me over the tenure of my career. Just teaching somebody how to activate their core properly, or tilt their pelvis posteriorly or anteriorly. Like a lot of people can't do that. And without doing that, they're not activating their core properly. Thus, it's definitely a skill I challenge all of you to continue to practice on as far as the cueing.
And
yeah, I want to
to
just
highlight on there, Zelig, that we talked about specifically with that group, as well as like tying in some of these things that we have started talking about, but then also kind of introducing when we get to more flexibility concepts, is the reason why the programming template is the order that it is. When you're warming up your muscles, and then you're foam rolling, and then you're stretching, specifically for like a floor bridge, you're starting to inhibit some of those overactive muscles like the hip flexors. If your hip flexors are tight, you're not going to be able to activate your glutes or your core as much in a floor bridge. So we're getting into more of the why behind the order of the programming template and the value of the order of it.
All right. Last couple of pieces of feedback that I want to point out, that I'm gonna just see if anyone wants to kind of showcase any type of skill sets in front of everyone before we wrap things up here. I saw when I was visiting the different breakout rooms, it was not mentioning acute variables within the tell, show, do process. So I think right now, as all of you guys are still trying to memorize them, it's definitely a challenge to make it a part of your tell, show, do process. But I think that's an opportunity for most, if not all, for you to practice when you're with your clients. And then I also challenge you, if you're one of the students that has not had any practice with other friends or family, it could be in person or virtually, guys, act now. We're halfway through the course. And if you want to become certified almost after the course ends, or you want to experience immediate success in the career, you need these trials in order to really figure out what are you good at, where are your opportunities, and how you can become better. We're 4 weeks in, we have 4 weeks left, so it's definitely not too late, but polish these skill sets now before the course is complete. So at this point, we have 5 minutes left. I want to invite anyone to showcase their skills, to tell, show, do their favorite core exercise for feedback from the entire group. This is the ultimate representation of getting comfortable being uncomfortable, which is only going to benefit the lucky individual that steps forward.
You want us to instruct and then like do the exercise?
That's right, Kate. So did you just volunteer yourself?
Okay. I guess so.
All right, Kate. So Kate, you are going to you're going to cue the entire group. Guys, entirely up to you if you want to go through the exercise as well. But more than anything, we're committed to giving Kate some great feedback, positive feedback, constructive feedback on the chat board. And then Kate, you'll also do some self-reflection. So the floor is yours, Kate.
Okay, so like I'm the trainer, right?
You're the trainer.
Instructing the client?
Instructing the class.
Okay. So I'm gonna have everybody go ahead and, okay, I've been doing the class. Get down on the floor. I'm gonna have you sit down on your glutes and you're gonna lay on your back. Let me see if I have room here. Yeah. Hold on. Okay, I'm gonna have you lay on your back flat, bringing your knees at 90 degree, and you're gonna slowly lower each leg down, keeping the other leg sedentary, like this. And then you're gonna switch to the opposite leg. All while having your head down flat in a stationary position. You're just gonna be bringing your knees in and dropping the opposite leg. Like this.
Excellent. Nice job, Kate. Guys, can we give Kate a virtual round of applause, please? Excellent. So Kate, if you were to self-reflect, one positive thing that you did and one opportunity for yourself, what would it be?
I think I'm assertive. That's never my problem. I just could be a little bit more clear on my directions. And then obviously just being a little bit more confident in what I'm telling the client to do. So just like owning it, even if I'm like, you know, just in your mind, almost like just faking it until you've like got it dialed in. Because obviously we're all going to be new at it. So we're not going to be solid in that, but we just need to like, you know, just pretend, be confident until you're wearing those pants and you got it.
Yep, Kate, that's awesome. Great self-reflection there. And I appreciate the comments that you had. Guys, if you have any other comments for Kate, type it in the chat board for her, please. I'll point out a couple of things, and Sheena, you can as well. Kate, I love the fact that you referenced their needs as a kinetic trade checkpoint. I think that's probably the best one. Then you mentioned your head and neck earlier. I would definitely maybe try to reference that a little bit earlier. Head and neck on the ground, lower back flat, navel drawn in, like things like that. But then the bend in the knees at 90 degrees was perfect. Just nice job overall there. And then secondly, acute variables. Don't forget that as part of the in-session experience. You always want to be able to express those. Sheena, any feedback on your end?
Yeah, I think great job. Obviously, it takes a lot of courage to step up and volunteer to do something like this. So I think you did a great job. I think really the main things that Zelig said, I feel like once you just get more repetition and know what you're doing, know how you want to coach and cue it, I think that you'll do great.
Thank you.
All right, Kate. Yeah, nice job, Kate. I appreciate you stepping forward as well. We would have been here all day if you had not. Guys, we are right at the top of the hour, so nice job overall. I think you guys understand the cadence of what's happening. Please make sure to fill out the midterm surveys. And if the next time we will see you, then is going to be on Tuesday. I think we addressed everything on the chat board, but if there was something we had missed, please stick around. Otherwise, you guys are officially dismissed. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.